Mina Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. And today is an incredible show, and I'm so happy and privileged and honored to be having this conversation on this platform with the people I'm about to have this conversation with. You might have noticed over the last few weeks, we've been having several conversations about obesity, about childhood obesity, and we've approached them in a really medical way. It's been clinical conversations. And while, of course, we can't discount the social aspect to it, to having a bigger body, we thought that it would be a really timely and relevant and interesting conversation because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of things that a lot of people, you might mean well, but you don't understand the politics and you don't understand the language and you don't understand why it's important to be aware of these things. So we're always trying on The Coffee Table to learn and to be better. And I can't think of anybody better than the two guests that I have on the show today with me to talk about fat shaming, to talk about body image, and to talk about how wonderful it is to love yourself and to celebrate yourself in all ways possible. It is our great pleasure to be welcoming today on The Coffee Table Saba Bano Malik, who is an RJ for City FM 89, where she does the show called Full Disclosure. She is a journalist with Arab News and is a member of the Aurat Naak movement, which means that she does excellent stand-up comedy. And she's also a model, and I'm sure you've seen her in a lot of campaigns, including Once for Generation. And joining Saba and myself is Baemisaal. And of course, some people need no introduction, but here it is. Bay is an artist, she's a body image advocate and a researcher. She runs a wonderful community-based public platform called Go Figure My Figure, and is the face also of so many wonderful fashion campaigns from Generation to Khadi, and is most recently the face of a body shop campaign. Welcome to the show, guys. This is wonderful. I'm so excited. So before we sort of launch into this conversation, viewers may have noticed that I am, of course, in a sari, but Saba is in a sari and so is Bay. And we did this very much on purpose. So Saba, tell everybody, why are we in saris today?
The reason we're in saris is that last week I was lucky enough to be a part of an activation on social media for Generation where I got to style a white sari in many different ways, and it was fun, and it was all about basically having fun. And for someone like me, I literally do not think twice before putting a sari on my body. But the comments, majority positive, I should say that, but there was quite a few that questioned whether my body was meant to be worn in a sari. And in fact, some were quite angry that somebody with a body like mine would do so. So as a form of solidarity and a bit of rebellion, which is unfortunately what I think a lot of bodies that look like mine get categorized as, basically living, we're wearing our saris today.
Yes, we are. And this is actually, I wanted to lead with this because this is the sort of thing that sparks conversations around body image and how we are expected to be in certain bodies that look a certain way. And Bay, I feel like you have really led the charge, as it were, in starting those conversations here in Pakistan. Because, of course, while I think it's also like a global obsession, being skinny.
Yeah, of course, health is talked about all the time. Bodies are talked about all the time because we're highly obsessed with them. I don't think anybody can ever tell me that they're not obsessed with, not that just their own bodies, but everyone else's as well. I love that you brought up health because it's so funny that we blanket hate and phobia under the marker of health because it's very... It's chaotic is what it is, because when we talk about health, why are we only talking about physical health? Why don't we talk about mental health? Stigmatization can never help someone, ever.
Yes.
And what we do with bigger bodies or fat bodies is that we just completely categorize them and ostracize them and say, oh, you're not healthy, well, then you're invalid, or you don't value enough. You're not, you don't have value.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so funny because we do this to little children in their early ages of development, and that carries on until they're adults.
Yes.
So if we really cared about health, would we not care about how this effect is, taking place in their minds?
Yes.
And what they're going to become when they're older? Because that scrutiny will play in your mind for years. And I know a lot of people that still haven't gotten over their internalized fat phobia. They haven't just gotten over any of the hate that they've gotten as kids.
Yes, absolutely.
And honestly, I think if we're talking about health, then we need to talk about mental health just as much as we need to talk about physical health, because otherwise it just cancels itself out.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up internalized, because what we're doing is that we are creating a narrative for people, and we're giving them this sort of really unfair way or an unfair lens of how to view their own self, and then how you view yourself. And when you're tying in your self-worth with how you look, then you're creating a really toxic equation here. So Saba, before we kind of unpack that further, I just want to kind of sort of go to a very basic thing, and I want to talk about like how does one define fat shaming? Because I think a lot of times, especially here, a lot of people are like, well, one doesn't mean it in a bad way, and how is this shaming? And I'm not trying to make you feel bad about yourself, but that's nearly always the effect. So sort of, how does one define fat shaming?
You posed it that way because it's so interesting that when you're talking to me about my body, and that too in a negative way, what do you mean you weren't trying to make me feel bad about myself? That's literally what your goal was. But fat shaming, it's actually quite a broad thing, because it is so impactful in ways that people don't even realize. It can go as far as whether you can get a job, whether you can be taken seriously by your doctor, whether, you can be viewed as someone who is intelligent or Bae said as well, is that your worth is sort of tied into this. And so fat shaming is the literal dismissal and humiliation of a person based on literally just the composition of their body. And like I said, it's systemic. It can get very terrible in ways where you're literally not being hired. There are so many cases of doctors literally overlooking a human who's coming to them for help just because of what they look like. I myself have been in scenarios like that. And then it's really the degradation of you. And I find that in a very quick to go that you comment on a person's physical appearance. And body weight, I would say, is a very accepted and tolerated thing to be ridiculed and used as a way to put people down. And it's completely loaded. They're not just talking about your body, as I said. It's an attack on you and your character.
I'm really glad, Saba, that you brought up the fact that how commenting on somebody's physical appearance and especially about their weight is such a normalized and accepted kind of way of intruding onto somebody's personal space. And Bae, do you feel that that's like a global phenomenon as well? Because a lot of times, most of the time actually, people with bigger bodies are viewed as somehow having failed themselves in a way, which means that other people feel entitled to be able to say something about that as well.
I completely agree with you. I mean, most people, when they look at a person, the first thought that crosses their mind is probably how they look, For me personally, I've trained myself just not to do that. I've just taught myself that that's just not the most important thing about anyone. Yeah. And that's like the last thing I think of, what their body looks like. Yeah. And that I think comes from, again, like this huge, like this years long, just eons long obsession that we have with the fact that it's completely all right to do that. It's the same as pointing someone's differently abled characteristics about themselves out to them, or pointing out someone's skin condition, or pointing out someone's skin color, or something like that. It's weird, it's awkward, it's personal, it's intimate, and it feels like a violation every time someone does that.
Yes.
Especially because we live in a country where we know that we have certain male figures that will tell us how to wear things or how not to wear things.
Yes.
It becomes very awkward. A lot of times I've noticed when older people check younger girls, especially. I haven't really seen them check a lot of boys in that, because, well, again, women's bodies are overtly sexualized, more sexualized, and also, subjected to this sort of
scrutiny,
just speculation from very early ages. And so when you tell a little child, cover yourself up because people are going to look at you, inherently, that just makes you an object. It kind of makes you feel like an object. And sometimes when, I've been body shamed and fat shamed ever since I was like 10. And to be very honest, I was like half, maybe quarter the size that I am right now. And it was very interesting to me because I grew up thinking, I'm a fat girl.
Yeah.
You know? And then when I grew up enough, I realized when I looked at all of my pictures from the past, I was like, wait a minute, hold up.
Yeah, like, wait a second. Absolutely. I want to unpack this more, but we're going to take a very quick break. Stay with us and come back to this wonderful conversation. We'll be back in just like 1 minute. Welcome back to the coffee table and the funnest show we've done all year. We're talking about body positivity and fat shaming with amazing women, Baemisaal and Saba Bano Malik. So Saba, before the break, we were talking about how people feel like they have some kind of weird ownership when it comes to A, women's bodies, but B, anybody with a bigger body. So if you're a woman with a bigger body, then it's just a sort of real explosion of a lot of people's opinions, completely unsolicited and unasked for. So do you feel like a lot of times people see people with bigger bodies and assume, and we touched on this, and assume that it's a failure somehow on that person's part? Because that's a lot of body shaming does imply that, oh, well, you know, if you just worked out and ate healthy, then of course everybody would be skinny, where that is clearly not the case.
Absolutely. And, I could literally probably do this whole show. Sorry, now that I'm looking at myself, I'm like, chin down, lady. I don't know why I'm talking up towards you like you're a giant. But me and I'll give an example. So like my sister and I, complete opposite body types, both Amazonian in our own way. But we went to get laser done. And the lady was like, why can't you be more like her? Almost like frustrated with me. I don't know this woman from Adam. And the thing is that when you look at fatness as failure, and then you also don't want to engage with a fat person if they're giving you the space to do so on why it is that, first of all, I don't owe anyone an explanation, but there's many reasons why my body is built and composited the way it is. And Bay made a point earlier that we're so quick to be like, you're not healthy because you don't look the way I need you to look in order to confirm my biases. Yeah. But no one's like, hey, are you mentally healthy? Do you feel good the way you are? How is it not a success that, I don't feel bad? And this is a conversation that we had off camera when we were talking about the show. But, at my absolute thinnest, it was because financially I had basically been ruined and I could not afford really to go out and eat and this and that. And everyone acted like, Saba, you have finally understood what your purpose is, which is to be a physically attractive woman based on heteronormative standards towards the male gaze. And otherwise, and then the minute you put on a little weight, it's like, great, you've lost the plot again. And the fact, like you said, it's like an ownership. Like, how is it that everyone else owns what I'm doing and how I'm expressing the way I feel or look? I don't know. It's really wild to me. Very wild to me.
And do you think that this sense of ownership then kind of expands into this generalized, and this is where the kind of feminism of the situation comes in also, is that women's bodies are already constantly policed. Like, we are always supposed to look a certain way, and somehow the way that we look at the moment is never good enough. So that's like one layer of control. And then when we have a woman who has a bigger body and is completely fine with it, is completely comfortable, and in actually many ways healthy, because like we've had dietitians and nutritionists on the show who have very clearly said that a healthy weight for you is not the same as what somebody else's healthy weight is. And it's completely possible to not look a normative way, but also be healthy. So that argument that just completely flies out of the window anyway. But it's basically a form of control, isn't it? Like perpetually.
Yes, you can tell whether someone is healthy mentally or physically by just looking at them. It doesn't work that way.
No.
A lot of bigger bodies can be very healthy medically, and a lot of thin bodies, straight-sized bodies, aren't.
Yeah.
And just because they fit the role that you've given them or the image that you've created for them doesn't mean that it works that way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to point out something that I don't think a lot of people know, which surprises me and also disappoints me a lot, is that the BMI scale that was created to basically label people as overweight or obese is actually one of the most racist medical researches ever done, because they automatically exclude colored women, people of color, Black women especially, women from South Asian backgrounds, women with differently able bodies, whether it's men or women. Because some people, I think if everyone ate the same food, we would still not look the same. Yes. Because our bodies are not meant to look the same.
Absolutely.
Otherwise we would. Okay. And when you look at it that way, it inherently you realize, okay, health, also the marker that we all sort of live by, is flawed in its foundations. So my question to always is, why are you so obsessed with how healthy someone else is? Why does it matter? And whether they are healthy or aren't healthy, if they're unhealthy, why does that take value away from them? Why do you take their rights away from them just because they're unhealthy?
Yes. No, I think it's really crucial that you pointed out that the BMI itself, which is like the holy grail of how anybody decides who is in a normal range and who isn't even based on people of color. It isn't even based on South Asians. It's a Caucasian index. So why are we even looking at it in the first place?
Which I'm sure we'll get into it on the show about health. But PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is so common in Pakistan that if you literally shot a pebble, you'd hit someone who has it. And when I've gone to, I've had many symptoms throughout my life. Unfortunately, like many women, I was diagnosed very late in the game. And every doctor, I've been lucky enough, this is not the common case, but very lucky enough to meet with progressive medical professionals. And a lot of them, when I've gone and been like, this is my research, this is what I've thought of, they're like, listen, everything you're looking at was based off of an average white woman in 1970s. And they don't even consider what is, so literally what Bae was saying is we're not even counted. Yeah. We're not even considered a woman, honestly, or a body that is worth observing and researching and understanding. And and like she said, you can eat the exact same things and be me and my sibling, for example. It's not like I was secretly having a completely different world than her. And health, again, you cannot see it. You just cannot see. I mean, many times I've wondered that what is wrong with me or this and that. And then you go, because, I was convinced that there must be something that I'm absolutely doing wrong, since everyone else seems to think I'm this monster. Yeah. And I mean, alhamdulillah, mashallah, it's a clean bill of health every single time. If you ask me to climb a mountain, I could probably do it with the right shoes. So it's anyways, just wanted to throw that.
No, that's absolutely essential. And I was reading statistics about how diet and exercise only counts for 5 to 10% of anybody's weight progress. So clearly, if diet and exercise was the answer, then everybody would look the same way, like Bae pointed out, and so did you. And I want to kind of come back, and Baemisaal, you were talking to me about this, sort of earlier, about how even the term obese or overweight are clinical terms, and they're also not appropriate terms to describe somebody as anymore. Outside of a clinic.
Yeah. So the thing is, in fat discourse is what you call fat people talking about their bodies, or fat activism. These two terms are labeled as look, anyone has the right to call someone whatever they feel, right? But then you should also be wary of the fact that certain titles, certain labels will have a bad effect, and you will be hurting people. So if you're okay with that, sure. If you're not okay with that, curb that need to use those words. Yeah. A lot of people get confused as to what they should call bigger people or fat people. I would say talk to them, ask them. And or just refer to them as bigger bodies if if they're comfortable with that. Yeah. But the fact is that when we say obese or when we say overweight, you're kind of saying there's a set standard and you're not in it. so we're just going to exclude you.
Yeah.
We're just going to say you don't matter because you aren't the right size.
Yeah.
And that's why these terms are problematic as hell.
Right. No, it's true. And that's why I want to talk about it, because a lot of times the fat-shaming discourse is A, couched as concern, or B, it just sort of comes from a place of not knowing and not asking. Like you said, like a lot of people don't ask because they inherently feel awkward asking also, which kind of really goes to show how even just knowing appropriate language is so awkward, because a lot of people, when they're around bigger bodied people, they don't know what to say. For example, like I know that we've talked about this and about how if you want to compliment a bigger bodied person, A, you don't have to comment on anybody's appearance first off, but B, when you do, you'll say something like, oh, you look really cute.
The amount of times someone will look at me up and down and they really want to say something nice. You can physically see, every fiber in their body to fight to say something, and they just resort to, you look really cute, and it's just like, that's the only thing you could say. That's it. That's the end of your vocabulary. Yeah. Unfortunate.
Like, yeah, why can't you say you look really good, or you look really hot, or you look really stylish? Like, there's so many things. Like, if you have to comment on the way somebody looks, but there is a kind of weird awkwardness. And Saba, where do you think that also just comes from the fact that bigger bodied people are always just seen either as heroes or as just like, meh, like, oh, okay, try better, buddy.
I was literally going to say that I would say the second most common compliment after cute would be confident. Oh my God, you're so confident. And it's like you rock up in a place and the only thing they can think to tell you is, my God, how did you do this? How did you appear when you look like this? Honestly, I think there's many different reasons why it's uncomfortable. And one of them, sadly, is I have found that people are uncomfortable when they find bigger bodied persons attractive. It makes them very uncomfortable because it blows their mind, because they're not supposed to think this. Yeah. Like you're supposed to be like, a monster. Literally, I keep saying it because I've been called a monster many times. And I think that, and then when you, like I said earlier, like if for example, I'm comfortable calling myself fat. Like it's something that, because again, I don't think it defines anything about me. I've literally was born 11 pounds. Like I've put the years into this, like I get it. But I think that when someone like me says, hey, like if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. It's off-putting almost, because like I said, again, like you're making someone uncomfortable with the conversation, and they've already been convinced for a very long time how they're supposed to feel about this. And I would actually link it very similarly to conversations I've had, say, about like Black Lives Matter, or I've had about Earth March, or I've had about feminism, anything, is that when you come and you say, listen, I am telling you that what you're saying about fat bodies, about health, about this is factually incorrect. Here, let me tell you, the reaction is usually anger and dismissal. Because they're like, no, I don't want to hear that, because I don't want to believe something that is wrong that I already believe. I mean, I'll tell you, I once put up a photo a few months ago where I was like, I don't feel that good about myself. Like I've put on a ton of weight and blah, 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 whatever. I cannot tell you the number of women who message me and were like, girl, let's just work out together. Like, we just need to like go to the gym and like and I was like, that was, or then of course the other ones were like, no, you're beautiful. And I'm like, I do not recall saying I was ugly.
Yes, feeling a bit blobby, and I do too. It's the COVID, and I've eaten a lot of chips. It doesn't mean that now that anybody is saying that they feel ugly. It's not the same thing, and that sort of conflation is so telling. Like I hate the fact that we have to take a break, but stay with us. We'll be back in like 1 second. Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and welcome back to the coffee table, where we are having a fantastic conversation with Saba, Bano, Malik, and Baemisaal about loving yourself and about body positivity. So, Bay, just before we sort of now turn, into another direction, I wanted to just sort of put it out there that, and I'm sure a lot of people are sort of thinking about this, that is it okay to describe somebody as fat? Because it didn't used to be okay.
So it honestly just depends on the person. I would say if you know someone closely enough, if you know the narrative, if you know the story behind it, if you know what it represents or what it has represented, then if your fat friend has, told you it's fine, then sure. But normally I would say in this context, especially in this society that we live in, I would say don't, because it hurts a lot of people. I've seen it happen. I've seen people cry in front of me because someone has called them that. And I would just say, why even say it? Why can't you just say person?
Yes, absolutely. Like, why do you even have to use that?
All of these words actually, curvy, I think Saba mentioned earlier, curvy or even plus size annoys some people, and especially bulky.
One thing that sort of thinking about, and I have daughters myself, and I feel like, and I've been looking at things like Jamila Jamil's I Weigh movement that I've followed a lot, and those wonderful conversations that she's also started, she's been having over so much time is about signaling. And how a lot of people with bigger bodies just are not represented in any kind of media. And again, this is like a worldwide thing, is that the sort of ideal that is always presented to us of beauty is always a very specific one. And I think that's doubly difficult for us because we are South Asians, we are not Caucasians, our legs don't look like that, our hair doesn't look like that, we're hairier than Caucasians. Like, there's so many things that we have internalized over time and over decades, really. So do you feel like do you feel like it's changing a little bit now, at least for us? Because, I know that you and Saba are in wonderful campaigns that are more inclusive, but do you feel that, like, how important is that signaling?
So I'm just going to say two words: representation matters.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. But for me, I would actually say in the 5 years that I've been working as Baemisaal, for me, barking at the top of my lungs for 4 years, 5th year finally happened. They actually did it.
Yeah.
But to me, I will still say there's a long road. There's a long, long road because I was given so many job ops and invitations to work with people when it was Women's Day and Women's March coming up. And it was so interesting because everyone wanted to look inclusive.
Yeah.
And the minute that ended, everyone was just like, you're great, but hamara bhi budget nahi hai. So it was
no, but
no shade, no shade.
Yeah. A little bit, but that's fine.
I think with other people as well, especially communities that are marginalized, I would love to see brands use us all the time for your regular campaigns. Why is it specific with this, when it's around, women's rights, women's movement, or if you want to get a stamp, I was going to talk about Urdu, then you're just going to pick us. Otherwise, we don't matter.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
But I will still, we're doing well, I think. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Saba?
I was going to say, I definitely think we're doing better. But, for example, me and Bae have talked about this a few times. This is the first time that we're both on a platform together. And it would be amazing if it wasn't okay, we're checking off a list of what we need to get. And again, no shade, thank God, I'm very happy with my opportunities, but imagine if we could be both in a campaign, or if we could tap some other women who are bigger bodied and are comfortable with it. I think that sort of signaling is also there, that it's not look, we found one, because there's obviously more than one of us who wears an arbitrary larger size. And the other thing I would say is, I do think we're in a unique part of the world now, where the way us three grew up. I mean, Bae's a bit younger, in her 20s, we're in our 30s, 40s, whatever. 30s, right? 40s, it doesn't matter. The point is we had a lot less control over what we consume. And I think now when you have things like social media and you decide what you're following, personally, even me as an adult woman, it did a lot of help for me to sort of curate what I was seeing and realize that, you know, the only thing that doesn't matter in fashion is a Caucasian, you know, extremely thin woman. And I can look at Black women and I can look at other South Asian women and see more of a variety. And frankly, the body positivity movement, there's some murky areas there, but through it, I have found a lot of just bigger bodied people who just, and I think that that has helped my own signaling that like, okay, like I can be bigger bodied. I can have hair on my arms. I can, you know, dropping my palu won't make me pass out on air. So things like that.
No, absolutely. And that it is so important because the more we see each other, the more we understand that you're not alone. And like, you know, Saba, you keep saying monster, you're not a freak show. So many people look like that, and so many people have the same journey. And ironically, like so many people are experiencing a lot of the same challenges and negativity as well. And when we have community, that is like the first step to supporting each other. And I think that's like, if you're actually concerned about someone, that's what you should be looking at. And like, Bae, tell me more about Go Figure My Figure, because that is a wonderful platform and I want everybody to know about it.
Yeah. Well, it started off, funnily enough, from a university project that I was doing for this course called mapping. And even though everyone was mapping actual ground for architecture and buildings and stuff, I decided to map people and emotions.
That's wonderful.
And because I always find it very intriguing to see that people have so much in common if they would just sit and talk. And one of those mutual factors is pain, unfortunately. But what it does, well, it can do two things. It can bring you closer, or it can turn you into an angry monster. But this could be anyone. It's how you choose to view it. It's how you choose to go on about it. So what the platform essentially does is you could either be anonymous or use your own name to tell a story of whatever you want to tell. And the most amazing thing that I pride myself on is that there were so many people, because I hear about 1,000 stories every day about people's body dysmorphia, about body image issues, about trigger warning, you know, domestic violence, sexual abuse, all of it. So I was just like, if these people were able to maybe talk to someone else who's been through the same thing and maybe find strength in that, why not? And that's essentially what that community is based on. It's just based on humanity, just that. Talk, support, really just that's it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that is something that I think about, because you and Saba both are on social media. You have so many followers. And I know that, Bae, you particularly do get inundated with a lot of people who want to share similar experiences with you. And that's a very heavy burden to bear. And one thing that I'm also thinking about, like Saba, you talked about confidence and how, and this is where we sort of began the show, about how so many people, and a lot of women, ironically, couldn't seem to kind of understand why anybody would be so comfortable in a bigger body. Like I think that also at the heart of it is how, as women, we just aren't supposed to feel comfortable in our bodies. Like that is not acceptable, let alone a bigger body. You know, so you're not supposed to take up space in the world. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. And I'll say this is something, that Bae and I very much have in common, is that our confidence, which, by the way, it's not like we wake up in the morning and are like, you know, boom, like we're ready to go and the world is ours. I mean, we're human as well. Things happen. You have your down days. But our confidence has, and I'm sorry, Bae, that I'm speaking for you, but it has sparked anger in people. It has sparked resentment in people. And I think, similar to what you said, that women in general, and you know, I'm in a video where I'm expressing nothing other than humor, the want to make you laugh and the want to laugh myself. And for that to be viewed as making a fool of myself is purely because we do not celebrate confidence. And you can really see it across the board, like leave bigger bodies even behind. Our actors are often maligned, especially women actors, maligned for, you know, something as minimum as posting like a selfie from a wedding, and people will literally tear you to shreds because maybe for a second you felt good and you wanted to share it.
And bigger bodies are subject to more ridicule than most in any case.
Absolutely. And it's really, it's almost as if they find it insulting, I find. And we've talked about this before, that it kind of, the response to it. So I'm in a privileged position where I can laugh this stuff off because I've gotten to this point. But as was pointed out in our earlier conversation, someone could be called fat and you could shatter them. You know, because it takes to just live every day is tough, y'all. And I've gotten to the point of confidence where somebody says these comments to me, I can personally laugh them off, let them go. But I have found it funny in a way that ultimately what you're telling me is that you don't like that I like myself. So what is it that you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Like, are we supposed, am I supposed to, I'm really sorry about this, that I felt good today. Because that really feels like what it is. Even, you know, when we spoke earlier, about, you know, people that just make an offhand comment to you, and is it okay if your friend or someone you trust uses certain words? I mean, at the end of the day, any sort of conversation like that, there's really one foundation to it, which is I want to take this person down a peg. That's it. Like, I cannot fathom any other reason you would need to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
You know?
And you can't, and even couching like tough love, like shaming anybody never works. It has never worked, and it's only made any people's mental health issues and their own self-esteem issues worse. So you're actually not helping anybody at all, ever. So babe, before we close, I just wanted you to tell me a little bit about body neutrality, because I think that is a direction that, you know, all body positive movements are, that sort of like, that's the end goal in a way.
So I'm just gonna bring in just a little thing that I did for my thesis, because it was just you know, about body image, and it's called "Pigs, Cows, and Gluttons: Our Obsession with Body Image." And I'm just gonna tell you why I use those words. So pigs, essentially, the term that I chose was this word that's used to describe fat bodies, to just completely bring them down.
Yeah.
To me, I labeled it as the undesirable, because we place so much pressure on just desirability on its own. Then there's cows, which stands for the lazy, because we're always just seen as, you know, useless human beings taking up space.
Yep. And just standing
the
around
gluttons, which comes from the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
The fact that it's even a sin, just and it's always, you know, talking about just excessively eating.
Yeah.
But the title that I gave it was the unapologetic, instead of the one that we all, you know normally.
Yeah.
Why? So I this is how I did it. I said these are 3 categories that we're always placed in, but this is how I'm going to look at it. The gluttons, which is the unapologetic one, is someone who says, okay, this is my body, this is what I look like, and what? That doesn't make me any less of a human being. I still have value. Yes. So body neutrality to me, and I've been working on this for a year or 2 now, to teach myself that as well, because every time, you know, you look in the mirror, you're like, but I stopped doing that ages ago. I didn't look at my belly or my thighs or my arms or any part of my body and go, you should change.
Yeah.
I was like, why does this matter? Why am I looking at you? Why am I not looking at the fact that I survived depression? I've survived taking care of my mom when she had cancer. I've survived bullying. I've survived just so many things that we just don't look at. Yeah. Because we're so obsessed with just physical appearance.
And sort of obsessed with negativity also.
Absolutely. But it kind of removes body positivity, because there's also such a thing as negative positive.
Yes. Negative positivity, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. But then what is neutrality?
The fact that we shouldn't always just put so much importance on how we look, but rather what we've overcome, our brain power, our intellect, humor, kindness, etc.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I know that a lot of this conversation has been about women, but all of these things apply to men with bigger bodies as well. And thank you so much, Baemisaal and Saba Bano, for being with me today and having this extremely important and honest and frank conversation that I have enjoyed so much. And I know that everybody watching has also had their minds blown in the best possible way. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.